And we understand that it has been career politicians in both parties who got us in this mess. And as Americans, we're going to stand up and hold them all accountable. You know, right now, we're having a big battle in Washington over defunding Obamacare. And I think it is the biggest and most important fight in the country right now. But you know what's interesting? The way that fight is playing out, it's not playing out in the smoky rooms in Washington, D.C. It's playing out with the American people. 2 nights ago, I was in Dallas, Texas. We had between 2,000 and 3,000 people at a rally to defund Obama. There's a national website, don'tfundit.com, don'tfundit.com. In just a few weeks, nearly 500,000 Americans have signed a national petition to defund Obamacare, have begun calling their senators, calling their representatives, saying, stand up and fight to avoid this train wreck that is the #1 job killer in this country. Now, I'm going to be brutally honest. I can't win this fight. Mike Lee can't win this fight. There is no elected politician in Washington who can win this fight. Only you can win this fight. Look, the effort to defund Obamacare has been called deceitful, dishonest, nuts, crazy, and wacko. And that's just by Republicans. If traditional Washington rules apply, we will not win this battle, but I'm convinced it's a whole new terrain. If in the next 39 days, between now and September 30th, we see millions of Americans rising up, just like the Founding Fathers did rising up against the British Army, just like the Texians did in Gonzales and the Alamo and San Jacinto, rising up against General Santa Anna. If we see the American people rise up and say, we want our freedom back, that's how we get it done. Because, you know, our founding principles remind us that sovereignty doesn't rest with a bunch of politicians in Washington. It rests with we the people. And if the people rise up by the millions and hold elected officials accountable, and I think you should hold every one of us accountable, including me, that's how we turn things around. And that leads to the third thing I'm going to tell you, which is the miracle of freedom produces incredible opportunity. You know, the free market system in the United States of America has been the greatest engine for prosperity and opportunity that the world has ever seen. With a system that limited government, protected our God-given rights, and allowed free men and free women to pursue the pursuit of happiness, their passions, their business, their entrepreneurial endeavors, by the 1830s, per capita income in the United States was higher than any nation in the world. By the 1830s. The engine of prosperity that allows small businesses to thrive and prosper is incredible. You know, for a long time I've advocated what I call opportunity conservatism, which is that every policy we think about, we talk about, should focus like a laser on opportunity, on easing the means of ascent up the economic ladder, on how it impacts the least well-off. Because, you know, the truth of the matter is, if you look at the policies we've seen over the last 4.5 years, out of control spending and debt and taxes and regulation, people who are hurt the most by that are the most vulnerable among us. They're young people, they're Hispanics, they're African Americans, they're single moms. They're the ones that are losing their jobs because of Obamacare. They're the ones that are getting their hours forcibly reduced to 29 hours a week because of Obamacare. The free market system has enabled the United States to bring millions of people from all over the world. No nation in the history of the world has enabled so many millions to start with nothing and achieve anything. The last 4 years, our economy has grown on average 0.9%. Because what we're doing doesn't work. But the biggest problem with that is when you have economic stagnation, opportunity drives up. Opportunity for people climbing the economic ladder, for people seeking the American dream. You know, when you pound small businesses with $1.7 trillion in new taxes, with massive regulation, it's not the CEOs who get hurt. It's the people just starting out. 2 days ago, I was in Cruz, at a round table with small business owners, about 20 small business owners. And we went around the table, and I just asked everyone, share with me an issue that's pressing on your heart. And it was striking. Out of 20 small business owners, there over half of them said the single biggest obstacle their business was facing was Obamacare. Several of them said they had 30, 40 employees. They had opportunities to expand, but they weren't going to do it because if they went over 50 employees, they'd fall under Obamacare and it'd put them out of business. One woman who was there owned several fast food restaurants. She explained, heartbroken, how she had to forcibly reduce the hours of all of her employees to 29 hours a week. Because she said, listen, if I don't do that, we go out of business. But she said, listen, my employees have worked for me 10, 20 years. They can't afford to live to feed their kids on 29 hours a week. But they also can't feed their kids if I go out of business. Another one, a manufacturer, who made hunting blinds, expressed his dismay that he's had to move his manufacturing overseas to China. And he said, listen, I want to make these in Texas. We would have 150 to 200 good jobs right here in Central Texas. But if I do that, it's under Obamacare, and I can't compete in the marketplace with the cost from Obamacare. This morning, I was in Austin meeting with high-tech leaders. A high-tech leader said the exact same thing. A high-tech leader stood up and said, listen, because of the cost of Obamacare, I'm facing a decision of having to drop every employee I've got in their health insurance. The people who get hit by this are those struggling to climb the economic ladder. And you know, that's something all of us understand, not just in the abstract sense, but in the real sense of our family. You know, with my family, freedom is something that I've seen firsthand. My dad, as many of you know, is from Cuba. As a kid, when he was 14, he started fighting the Cuban Revolution. Fought for 4 years as a teenager. He was thrown in prison and tortured. Beaten almost to death. For those of y'all, my dad's been up here, for those of y'all that have had the chance to meet my dad, his front teeth are not his own, because they were kicked out of his mouth in the Cuban jail. When he came to Texas, it was 1957. He landed in Austin. He was 18, couldn't speak English. Had $100 in his underwear. I don't actually advise carrying money. But he got a job washing dishes, making 50 cents an hour. Why did he wash dishes? Because you didn't have to speak English. You didn't have to speak English, you just had to be able to stick a dish under hot water. And he could do that without having to talk to anyone. And making 50 cents an hour, he paid his way through the University of Texas. Graduated, went on to get a job, went on to start a small business, and work towards the American dream. Now, you know, my dad has been my hero my entire life. But do you know what I find so incredible about his story? How commonplace it is. Every one of us here tonight has a story just like that. Every one of us, we could walk up here one at a time and stand up. We are all, whether it's us or our parents or our great-great-great-grandparents, we are all the children of those who risked everything for freedom. suggest to you that's the fundamental DNA of what it means to be an American. To value freedom and opportunity above all else. That's our shared heritage. And it's also because of that shared heritage why we come together when there's a tragedy like what happened in West Texas. Because we came on the frontier to risk everything so that each of us can achieve our full potential. You know, what we have in the United States is so unusual, it's unique. This is a nation where anybody, doesn't matter who your daddy is, doesn't matter where you came from, anybody based on hard work and perseverance and the content of your character can achieve anything. That's a magnificent heritage. It's our shared heritage, and I will tell you, as worried as many of us are about where this country is, I want to close by saying, if you remember nothing that I said tonight, then you probably had too much to drink. If you remember one thing I said tonight, I want it to be this, that I am profoundly optimistic. I am optimistic that we're going to pull our nation back from this fiscal and economic break, that we're going to restore economic growth. And I'm optimistic for three very simple reasons. Number one, I'm optimistic because we're right, because freedom works, because the policies we're seeing don't work, and truth will prevail. I'm optimistic, second, because we have got a new generation of leaders stepping forward who understand free market principles, understand our Constitution, and have something a little bit rare in Washington: courage. You know, all of us were taught in high school biology that invertebrates can't walk upright. And yet politicians disprove that every single day. And if you think of that new generation of leaders we're seeing, if you think about people like Mike Lee, like Rand Paul, like Marco Rubio, what's striking is 5 years ago, none of them were in office. This is a new generation of leaders who are stepping forward and communicating free market principles in a way that is an echo of Reagan, in a way that is positive, that is optimistic, that is unifying, that is appealing to our better angels, that is not mean, nasty, divisive, but is hearkening back to the common sense founding principles that made this nation great. But the third and final reason I'm optimistic, the biggest reason I'm optimistic, is because of the power of the grassroots uprising. The women and men in this room can accomplish anything. Through prayer, through reaching out to your friends, to your neighbors, to your family, to speaking out, to saying, we need to get back to the principles that made this nation strong. That's how we do it, and I can tell you, I am incredibly optimistic that together, marching arm in arm, we are going to restore that shining city on a hill that is the United States of America. Thank you, and God bless.